Hi, this is Paul Sandon with Business Success Tips, and I have as my guest Wendell Bedell from GrowMyHVAC. Good morning, Wendell.
Good morning, Paul.
So, can you tell me the listeners a little about your background and how you started your company and just about yourself?
Perfect. I started back in 2001 as a commercial residential training organization for HVAC contractors. I've got about 25 years experience doing audits. I've had a team of auditors going out, consultants working with contractors. So today I have published over the last year and a half two A to Z books on retail residential HVAC service business and one for commercial.
So, when you say an audit, what is an audit?
An audit goes in and compares their operating processes, both operating and work delivery processes, to best practice, and then make recommendations. Excuse me, and make recommendations for how to improve. So I give them implementation plans.
So, who would make them audit? They choose to audit themselves, or one of their manufacturers audits them? How do they get audited? Because audit always sounds bad to me. Like, oh my God, I'm getting audited, right? So,
Oh yeah, no, it's actually a performance enhancement audit is what we call it. We don't just call it an audit because they probably would choke. Performance enhancement audits, we check their marketing, their operating, how they're staffed, how they're organized, and come up with an implementation plan to get them towards best practice so they can become profitable.
okay. And when you did those audits, who'd you do them for?
Usually for the owners, general managers, larger corporations. It could be a director of sales or director of operations.
So you had a large company and they would do audits of their franchisees or that kind of thing?
Yeah, some of the people I hired came in from the franchise environment. So they went out, their jobs were to go after all the different franchises and compare their operations to what they should be doing so that they can get them online. So together, we all got together and came up with, we analyzed all the best practices out there and boiled it down to what's working, what's successful contractors are using.
So what inspired you to write the textbooks?
Doing all these audits over all these years, it's amazing. You look at the Census Bureau and it says the average net profit is only 2.3% across the board throughout the US and Canada. So during our audits, the more successful contractors, though, were those who were managing people to process. So what my primary inspiration was to develop a textbook that allowed owners, operators, or those who are trying to grow their own careers to a different position within the HVAC to learn about best practice, so they can.
So what process did you use for writing this textbook?
Well, the first thing I had to do was explain. Well, give contractors a what are the symptoms of poor profitability to begin with. I mean, why 2.3% net across the board? Losing 85% of all contractors within the first 5 years of startup, and another 10% every year thereafter had a lot to do with the fact that they had symptoms. They just didn't realize it. Like poor cash flow, lower cyclic revenues, or the inability to retain customers, or the inability to retain their people.
So how do you get, I can't, I've worked contractors 40 years. How do you get them to read a textbook? I can't get them to read a profit and loss of a textbook. So how did you inspire guys to do this?
Because the textbook itself is good, especially for general managers and operating managers, especially if they have a particular issue with sales or operations. But it's the online training tracks for each job position that allows, because people would rather listen, or like what we're doing right now, looking at talking and having each of the sections pretty much narrated for them, so they can learn on the car or they can learn on the road. And when you hire someone, you make it part of their job description, that they learn about what their objectives are and where they should be going with what are their duties and why they should be doing them.
So what are some of the symptoms of poor profitability?
Poor cash flow, lower cyclic revenues, poor customer retention, and poor recruiting and retention. that, and the reason why they have it is because they got their symptoms. There's 14 causes. If they're doing processes poorly, there's 14 of them. If they're doing it poorly, then it causes negative impact on profitability.
Well, assuming most of these guys don't like to go to school, right? Just assuming that, knowing contracts for a long time. Now that you have a solution, I mean, I've done this for coaching 40 years. I could, tell people what to do, but getting to do it was a real challenge for me.
Right.
So how have you pulled that off?
By giving them, like for instance, in residential repair, call handling. We give them online training for the technicians on how to use the flat rate price guides and how to use the call handling forms and tools, so that and occasionally we'll even meet privately with the contractor and his team to go over any questions they may have. But usually, if we do that, we not only do they get trained online with video, but when we meet with them, I usually give them a handout before we meet for a whole week in advance. Usually it'll include the price guide, call handling forms, performance-based pay, job descriptions, things that would all.
Well, how does your online training program work?
Well, the online training program, a general manager or even a person who wants to increase their career, they would actually sign up for the HVAC Pro Business Growth Club on the residential side or commercial. Mm-hmm. And once they sign up, they would take their training classes. They would have each general manager would have 31 sections. But if I'm hiring a comfort advisor, for instance, there'll be a subset of what the general manager learned that's being trained for the comfort advisor. So everybody's on the same page.
I like the word comfort advisor. Sounds better than a salesperson, right?
Yeah.
So how does your HVAC like growth club thing? What's that? I've heard about that. What's that do?
Well, the growth club itself is the means for the contractor to not only get the textbook, but also the standard operating procedures, all the standard procedures in writing, all the call handling forms, tools, pricing tools, flat rate pricing books. If they do commercial, we give them estimating programs and stuff and proposal templates and everything they need to really go out and do their.
Now, is there any software you recommend they use?
I'm a pretty strong believer that they should be using dispatch software so that they can take payment in the field. Like House Call Pro is pretty popular right now with my clients. Field Edge, that's from Intuit. You'd think it'd work really well, seeing how a lot of contractors use QuickBooks, but it doesn't. Just saying. I prefer something that's easy, that's proven, and it's contractor friendly.
So, you've been doing this for a couple of years. What's your plans for the future? You're going to keep coaching, or how are you going to change the industry?
Well, right now we produce for both residential and commercial contractors on the HVAC side, the plumbing side, and electrical side, flat rate pricing, upfront pricing that you can use in the field for repair. On the residential side, HVAC, we have replacement guides, ductless mini split guides, so that they have a complete pricing system when they go out and meet their customers. So those technology tends to make changes in the field, changes in the equipment. Those books have to be expanded. We're also expanding the business side of the training for especially in the leadership development, teaching supervisors, any manager, how to develop a team, how to hold people accountable, but also improve their own skills for communication.
Do you think like leadership skills and that kind of thing?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then, what advice would you give to contractors, regarding like training themselves and their staff? If you were going to say, this is what you guys should do.
Yeah. A lot of contractors hire people from other industries, other contracting companies. And if they're doing it wrong over there, they bring all that doing it wrong over here. So I recommend that contractors train each position they hire for, even if the person's doing multiple jobs, each of those jobs, train them on best practice. Let them know in our industry what the objectives are, what their duties, but what's the objective of their job, within the business, so that they have a clue, versus,
So do
processes.
you think you should hire people from in the industry or from out? Like, we found a lot of success in hiring wedding planners for office managers because of the same skill set. So do you suggest hiring? Because I've heard two cases. One says you hire in the industry because you don't want to train them. They know the lingo, they know all the stuff, they can do it easier. And the other one is, like you said, they bring their bad habits with you. I know some of the companies like D.R. Horton and Lennar, they don't want people to have any background at all. They want to teach them the Lennar way or the D.R. Horton way of
Yeah,
running a job.
right. Um, because of the trades being technical in what they do, whether they're replacing or repairing HVAC, how you communicate with consumers, and from the office, how you communicate to the field, the whole interface. I'm a firm believer that when you hire people, even if they come from within the field, I mean, typically we are, except for dispatching and because dispatch is really 95% customer care, 5% technical. We can teach them job
Right.
loading.
Right.
So I agree with you there. But if I hire a project manager, he has to have some background in project managing HVAC, not necessarily other things, only because the sequence in which HVAC is either repaired or replaced is unique, to those pieces of equipment, HVAC.
So give me a couple of stories. I want to hear your best client, worst client stories. So give me a scenario where you went in and you intervened and you turned everything around for first start. Give me a sample. You don't have to give the guy's name, or just give me
Yeah.
a scenario.
Well, we've done a lot of audits. Okay, hundreds of them. And what we find is 95% of the time, all contractors share a lot of things and similarities. The biggest situation that I've had is gone in and they don't have selling processes, not in repair side or on the replacement side. But just looking at the repair side, one contractor saw a 65% increase in revenue because we gave his people in the field a path to follow. So when they arrived at the door, they didn't just run out to the unit. They
What is
actually,
that path? Give me some specifics. Wendell, what does the path look like? You got, I'm this guy. I used to just show up and do my thing. Now, how am I going to do differently?
well, normally if you hire a contractor who's coming, from more of a, he doesn't have any processes, the technician shows up and goes right straight to the unit outside, versus coming in and interviewing the customer about the patient because it's usually dead. And then walk in the system. Because you really can't be starting up equipment, or at least you're not supposed to be starting up equipment unless you've made sure it's safe to do so. It's like a pilot. If somebody's unit is down in the middle of winter and they got a hot plate out or a candle, and you go and start the unit up and it catches a curtain on fire and you burn down the house.
Not good.
So the new process that I would recommend is that they show up to the door, interview the customer, gain permission. There's a script that starts it and ends it. A set of questions I ask about hot and cold spots and whatnot. But as the contractor walks the system, and if he sees things that relate to being too hot or too cold, and they see reasons why, like maybe no balancing dampers or maybe furniture blocking supply and returns, they make the customer aware of these things. But in the process of making them aware, a lot of times the customer says, "Yeah, I'd like that fixed." So that's where they're picking up another 65% more in revenue.
How do you teach the tech how to build a relationship with the customer? Because I know I've had sometimes some of the franchises do well because the whole lot of the truck looks right, they have the uniform, they don't step on the flowers, they have this whole process. That's why franchises succeed. Whereas two guys in a truck, the guy shows up in a beat up truck, he has Levi's and a t-shirt and says, where's the AC unit and I'll fix it, right?
Right. Well, we do tell them how they should show up to the door, park the vehicle in a proper location, not in the opposite direction of traffic, and that kind of stuff. And when they show up, they should be in a clean uniform, look neat, look like they're worthy enough to do the repair. We give them scripts to practice on how to introduce themselves, confirm the purpose of the call. On their clipboard, they already got a set of checklists so that they look professional and they can ask logical questions efficiently, do the walkthrough, make suggestions about anything. They can even take out their price book and give a quote for whole house air filtration. If they said they had asthma or allergies and they find that they got a fiber filter. So how you get them to be more, how you get them to be more customer friendly.
I mean, how do how do you improve their relationship skills? Because I know one of the things that I've worked with contractors on is people, I mean, if you change your water heater or change an air conditioner, whatever, people are going to judge you by your truck, your appearance, your how you treated their dog. Did you look them in the eye? Did you shake hands? Do you have a good firm handshake? They know how to judge all that. They don't have a clue on the person's technical ability.
Right. That's correct. But they are expecting, though, that person showing up the door to be an expert.
Right. And unfortunately, they're going to judge the person's, excuse me, technical ability by the things they know, the handshake, the look in the eye, that the interview. They're going to make a decision on if that person is technically competent with stuff that has nothing to do with technical competence.
Right. The questions that you ask have to be logical and for the consumer. But in the process, though, it looks like you're in the business. When you come with a checklist and form, and it's very logical, you transition in, transition out of that form because the form is designed to do that. It allows them to present themselves in a professional manner, which makes it easier. And then, of course, at the end of that interview, when they first meet the customer, they ask the customer if they find anything at all that could save them money or improve their system's operation or make it safer in and around the equipment. Would you want me to share that with you? Well, that gives, naturally customers say yes, and that gives that technician license to be that customer's advisor. So that's one of the ways to help improve that, that you're breaking of the ice or whatever with the customer. They realize that you are an expert. And
so you've effectively turned technicians into salespeople.
We call it consultative approach for technicians. Comfort advisors and commercial sales reps, that's selling. But even there, we change their business cards to technical advisor or consultant. So technicians, we don't want them selling. We want them telling. It's a big difference. So that's why I got permission when I first met the customer to give them advice. So when they give advice, once they give advice, they can go to their price guidance and give the customer a price for replacing whole house air filtration, say, to resolve asthma or poor filtration. And then right after they do that, though, they simply state, would you want me to take care of that for you today? Because they're not in sales. But what the contractors see when they do that is they're seeing about a 65% bump.
So what you're saying is if contractors, especially in HVAC, do not have a given sales pro, like the training you're providing, like they get you or somebody else, they haven't got the right training. So they're walking away from possibly 30 or 40% of the revenue just because they don't know what they're doing.
Right. And they don't have a call handling process to let them. But you also want to make sure in this process that I'm talking about is that you pay your technicians what they're worth, but you also give them an incentive. If the customer says to you, I'd go with the whole house air filtration, it's a $950 ticket, he not only gets his wages, and if he beats the ticket, he gets 3% of that. And then if he sells something on the top of that, because the customer should say, buy something from him. He doesn't sell. Somebody buys something from him, like whole house air filtration, maybe he picks up another $100. So they have an incentive to walk the system and interview the customer. And because the process allows them to then advise the customer. And through their advice, treating customers like family is what it's all about. That's why customers buy from them, because they're not selling, they're telling.
So what you're saying to the people listening to this, and I think even if not you're an HVAC contractor, if you're a general contractor, you're doing a home repair or you're in the house, that probably building trust and relationship is just as important as technical competence.
That's correct. I agree.
And so a lot of the people don't know how to build trust and relationship. They've never been trained.
That's correct. They don't have a path. I mean, you can take a mediocre technician or even somebody green that's been, that can start up a unit even and give him a path to follow, and he could produce at the same revenue levels as someone who's a journeyman.
Interesting. So your advice is that in general, people that in the field are undertrained in the selling side of the telling side, as you say, and with a little investment with you or someone else that does what you like you do, that helps train the people, the ROI must be amazing, right?
It is. Well, they have what we provide for every transaction, whether you're residential or commercial. If you're out there on a repair or replacement or a design build or a retrofit, you give them opportunity assessment forms that match the opportunity so that they don't miss stuff. And that's the big problem. These, they may be good technicians, but they didn't think to go and look to see the reason why they're too hot or cold in the master bedroom, which is at the end of a duct run, and they look and there's no balancing dampers to make that happen.
Okay. So if people listening to this podcast are interested in what you tell me a little bit about what you do, how you do it, how they get in touch with you, because it sounds like, for every dollar they spend with someone like you, they're going to get like $10 back. It should be a huge ROI.
Our testimonials we get from our contractors is that we're not a cost center. We're a profit center. It only costs through Amazon, for instance, just get either the residential or the A to Z book on commercial business, service business. It's only $99, but the club is only $150 a month. So you can buy a book for $99, or you can get the club and not only get the book, but you get all the processes being shown and demonstrated in the book for like $150 a month.
And I would assume, doing the numbers, if you're doing, I don't know, $1 million or so as an HVAC guy, and you kick it up, I mean, I don't know what the R rated and return on that, but it's like you invest, $150 back and get like, thousands literally in return, right?
Yeah, because if they had to create half the call handling forms, if they have to provide performance based pay above their wages, they'd have to create all this stuff. So what we've done is through research is come up with the best practices in both residential and commercial contracting to not only to be able to recruit and retain and make money with people who are focused on customers.
Wendell, it reminds me, there's a quote that says, I don't know exactly, but it says, a smart guy learns from his mistakes, but a wise person learns from mistakes of others, right?
Isn't that the truth?
You can either be smart or wise, and it's usually more profitably wise. And I always tell people they can stay in business as long as they can afford to pay for their mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's why 85% go under, because they can't afford to pay for their mistakes, right?
Yeah. Like, one of the things we talk about too in the program is making sure that contracts have the proper terms and conditions. So many contractors have gone out of business just because they didn't have protection from liability in it, or the fact that or payment protection. If you don't pay me, you'll pay my legal fees to collect the money. Just simple stuff like that. So it doesn't take much to wreck your business.
That's true.
You don't have the proper processes.
Well, I think, this has been very, very, useful to our clients and our people listening to this. So I would suggest they contact you. I mean, that's incredibly inexpensive, and you'd be crazy not to do it, because most of the people in this industry do not have the processes down. Unless you're franchisees, they haven't franchised this industry very well. So the big problem is you don't have the processes to appropriately train people. You don't have the system to put them into. I guess the reason very few franchises fail, because when you buy the franchise, you buy all the systems. Whereas a lot of independent business owners fail because they haven't got the systems. What you're saying, if you're providing all the systems like a franchise would provide at a fraction of the cost.
That's correct. That's right. And the online training is making it possible for if I'm going to hire a service manager, but he's my lead tech right now, he can come in, take him even after hours or on the weekend, learn about what the job is. It's a lot different than what he was doing out in the field.
That makes great sense. Yeah. Well, how can people get in touch with you, Wendell?
I can give them my telephone number. They can go, which is 603-557-1611. They can contact me through GrowMyHVAC.com or joinhvac.com or Wendell Bedell .com. It's all three.
There's a lot of ways to get in touch. Thank you very much. So I suggest our listeners, if you are interested in increasing you don't have the systems down, and that's why 85% of people go down, Wendell is an incredible resource for you guys. Thanks for coming. Well, I really appreciate your advice. I think it's really useful.
Thank you, Paul, for having me on.
Well, that's it for today for Barista Success Tips. You know, it's easy to, you know, to know what to do, but doing what you know can be really hard. So Wendell can help you with that.
Awesome.